our series in on forgiveness. Forgiveness is for people. Oh, here it is. Yeah, forgiveness is for people. And like I was saying, so I'm going to finish up that series tonight. And then, hey, did you get my email today? Okay. Yes. And next week, Lord willing, you're going to have a brand new preacher. Because my wife and I are traveling out to New Mexico, and I've been invited to preach at that fellowship meeting out there in Alamogordo on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or someday. I asked David if he wouldn't take the challenge of coming up and preaching for me on Wednesday night. And he said, as long as I do everything for him, as long as I tell him what subject, as long as I give him the verses, as long as I voice it for him.
Here's the ironic thing about it, is that sheet that you sent me,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually working on something that was very similar to that, but in a different book,
Perfect.
the Gospels of John.
Use that as, see, we used to say, take that cream and make your own butter. That's what I was going to suggest anyways. Don't just teach that lesson, make it your own. And so David is going to come up and preach for me next Wednesday. And so I'm excited to hear how that goes. It will be recorded, and I will be able to see it later.
I thought we were having problems with the computer, it couldn't do that.
No, it can record. It just can't live stream. Yeah. So speaking of, we are recording, right? Okay. What?
Attendance is optional, right? Because it's just Dave.
On next Wednesday night? Attendance is doubly required. So you need to take up 2 seats that night and make sure that you are here doubly to encourage the new preacher. And so, like I said, I'm looking forward to it. I'm supposed to be gone at the end of the month as well, and so I'm going to ask another man to preach for me on that week. And so we're gonna work you guys in. You know that New Year's Eve thing, where all the men got up and preached. I was doing a talent scout, and so we're gonna put some of you guys to work on these nights that I have to be out. Instead of just going to John, I've got John, and I can just have John do it. I've got Randall, and I can just ask Randall to do it. But I'd like to incorporate a couple of you other men, give you the opportunity. And John needs to get his health up, because I'm gonna throw him down again. I'm going to tag him to be one of these preachers as well. All right, 1 Timothy chapter 1. 1 Timothy chapter 1. I know I had you do this last week, but if you have your bookmarks, we are going to go over that bookmark right after we read 1 Timothy. We're going to look at everything on it. Just run right through it real quick. Pick your brains a little bit, and then I've got a couple of more verses afterwards, kind of closing thoughts on this, the power of forgiveness. And so in 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse number 5, the goal for having the power of forgiveness, the goal of forgiving others, the goal of being in the habit of forgiving, we find in 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5, it says this: Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and of a good conscience. And that's where this idea of forgiveness comes in and helps us. That we can have a good conscience. And really that's a good conscience between us and God, and then that's a good conscience as brothers and sisters. We need to have a good conscience one to another. And so the power of forgiveness, the culmination of this whole study of really rooting out the bitterness. We've looked into bitterness a whole lot in the beginning of this study. This is lesson number 10 in this study. And a lot of it has had to do with bitterness. And then being able to forgive that and to get past that. Or if the person is just at the place of won't reconcile. Now, I'm not going to say can't be forgiven, because everybody can be forgiven. That's a choice. But if they won't reconcile, then you note that man, you have no fellowship with them. We looked at that early on. But you need to have a clear conscience. You need to have a good conscience. And so the culmination of this whole study is that we need to be of a good conscience. All right, let's take a look at the bookmark and go through, and we're going to pick out some places some things that we've already seen in the lessons. And like I said, I'm going to pick your brain, so I need you to turn your brains on. All right, this is not a time to go to sleep. This is not a time to be mentally asleep and your eyes are open like I was in class. It's not anything like that. I need you to think. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to read each one, and I want you to see if you can find a Bible verse or a portion of a Bible verse, or, I think it says it's something like this in the scriptures. It sounds like Bible, but let's look for a biblical principle for a majority of these. All right, we'll try to make it quick as we go through, because there are like 20 of them, are there not? Yeah, there's 20 of them. And so we'll do it kind of quick. We won't linger on this too long, but I do want to take some time and go through it. So number 1, stop making what someone did to you bigger than what Jesus did for you. Now, what did Jesus do for you? Yeah, everything. He forgave us, didn't he? Of every single fault that we've ever had and every single offense that we've ever perpetrated against him, has he forgiven us? Yes. What's a good forgiving Bible verse? Jordan?
The parable about where the guy owes millions or
10,000 talents.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then he gets mad at the guy who owes him just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Did so much more.
Yep. Very good. Very good. So there were the 2 servants that owed the king, had a debt to the king. One was 10,000 talents. The other one was like 50 pence or something. And he frankly forgave them, or he forgave the one with the 10,000 talents. But the servant had a friend that owed him like 50 pence, which is like 2 cents. And he wouldn't forgive him. And he threw him in jail. And so the king says, all right, if that's how you're going to be with that one, then you owe your debt. And so stop making what someone did to you bigger than what Jesus did for you. Remember, Jesus forgave you everything. Make sure that you forgive everything. All right, number 2. He who does not forgive destroys the bridge over which he himself must pass. That kind of goes with number 1. All right, you've got to go over the bridge of forgiveness. And make sure you don't destroy that bridge. Randall? All right, if you don't forgive, my Father which is in heaven will not forgive you your trespasses. All right, number 3, once you forgive someone, refuse to rehearse, nurse, curse your offense. I think we talked about this last week, didn't we? So don't rehearse, nurse. You remember the arm? Do you remember that? Do you remember the arm from last week? We were talking about it on White Christmas. Danny Kaye, he would look at Bing Crosby. Oh, every time that he wanted Bing Crosby to do something, oh, my arm. That's the nursing. So remember, don't nurse, refuse to rehearse, nurse, or curse. All right, number 4, unforgiveness binds you in the prison of offense. Why would it bind you in a prison? Well, you won't be forgiven. But what are you gonna dwell on? You're gonna dwell on the offense, and so you're gonna have a grudge.
My stepmother, she let my dad, she got involved with this guy named Alan. And Alan, every time I talked to that, I hate my ex-wife so much, she's so horrible, I hate that one, she took money from me, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Alan, you can't have a grudge like this, it's gonna kill you. And about 3 years later, he died.
Yeah.
He was my age.
I think I brought it up once that unforgiveness, bitterness affects the heart physically. All right, number 5, forgiveness is not an emotion. It is a decision. It's not a feeling, but a choice. All right, I think this is one of the first lessons we had. You don't wait until you have a warm and fuzzy feeling before you forgive. As the offense is happening, you need to forgive. All right? Easy to say, hard to do. I've been saying that the whole time. All right? But I still have to say it. As it's happening, it's our responsibility to forgive. Jordan?
When Jesus was on the cross,
That's right. When Jesus was on the cross, they had just nailed him there, and he said, Father, forgive them. All right? Stephen would be another one. As he was being stoned by those Jews, he said the same thing. Father, lay not this charge to them. All right, Art? Is that what you were going to say too?
no. What was I gonna say? It was,
All right, never mind. Number 6, forgiveness is absorbing a liability someone else deserves to pay. There's a verse that says somewhere it's better to take the offense than to something your brother. It's better to take the offense.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about not taking your brother to court.
Okay, it's better to take the offense than it is. Yeah. So that would be that. All right, number 7, the biblical attitude for forgiveness. Grant it when it's requested, give it when it's not. All right, we've talked about that. While the offense is happening, you need to be forgiving. Number 8, forgiveness is taking the grace God has shown to you and extending it to your offender. That almost goes with number 1 and 2. Okay, God has shown us so much grace. We too should be extending that grace out. All right, number 9, bitterness does more damage to the container in which it is stored than to the object on which it is poured. That's right. You remember the other illustration on that was holding the shotgun the wrong way, hoping the recoil will hurt somebody else? Right? So, yeah, that was one of the illustrations on one of the lessons on the night. Shooting yourself with the shotgun, hoping the recoil will hurt the offender. Can I just say that's dumb? All right, number 10, forgiveness is releasing a debt. As you release your debt, your spirit is liberated. And so, again, say it again. Zacchaeus. When he, of course, he was a publican, he was a tax collector. he told Jesus that if I have taken from anybody else, then I'll return it fourfold. And he was liberated. You guys remember that song? Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. Number 11, normally it's better to resolve a relationship than dissolve a relationship. We should always strive for reconciliation. We should always strive for that. So we should forgive. We should not hold grudges. You shouldn't be like the two brothers that I've mentioned often. One sat on this side, one sat on that side, and never the twain did meet, and they went to the same church. That's sad. All right, Art, do you remember now?
Well, I remember the other one. It was, the prodigal son where the father was actually wronged, and he created his son.
Yes. I mean, while the son returned, the son returned, still having the stench of the pigsty on him. And what did the father do? Ran to him, hugged him, kissed his neck. While the stench was still on him. You know, that's how our Father is too. While the stench of the world is on us, we turn around, there he is. All right, number 12. Don't let bitterness turn you into the person that hurts you. Don't let bitterness turn you into the person that hurts you. Think about that for a little bit. I hate that person so much. I hate that person. So they're loud and obnoxious. And then you become loud and obnoxious in your hatreds toward that person. And so you become them. So don't let that happen. Number 13. Bitterness will take you farther than you plan to go, keep you longer than you plan to stay, and cost you more than you plan to pay. Doesn't that sound like sin? Don't we normally say that about sin? Usually, you know, when somebody preaches on it, you'll hear this eventually. But it's the same thing about bitterness. All right, number 14. Forgiveness never justifies the sins of others, but it keeps their sin from defeating us.
So you forgive them, but if they rob you, they go to jail. But you forgive them.
Well, yeah, that, and he goes to jail. I'm not going to be sad about it.
No.
I'm not going to quit on God because he went to jail, because he wouldn't receive the forgiveness of God and stop doing his sin. That's not going to defeat me. And that's the idea here. That's the idea here. Forgiveness never justifies the sins of others. Yeah, he robbed me, so I'm going to forgive him. But if he ends up going to jail, no skin off my back. All right, number 15. Forgiveness is giving up my right to hurt you for hurting me. I do not have a license to wrong those who have wronged me. I think we talked about this several weeks ago.
David and Saul.
Yeah, David and Saul. I mean, Saul was trying to kill him. Did David turn around and try to kill Saul?
He had a chance to, but he didn't do it.
Yeah, the answer is no. He did have the opportunity. And he felt bad when he cut the little hem of his skirt off. All right, number 16. We do not forgive others because they are right. We forgive others because we want to be right. Okay? You forgiving somebody else doesn't say that they were right. Did you hear that? Nod your head. You forgiving somebody else doesn't admit that they were right. However, it does make it the ability for you to be right with God. And that's where we need to get to. And so, David, you don't have to ask Lauren forgiveness and admit that she was right. Okay? You don't have to admit that she was right. Not out loud. All right, 17. Rehearsing your hurts will cultivate bitterness. Rehearsing your blessings will cultivate gratitude. You know, we were talking about that in that verse. Was it Acts 4:31? Is that the verse? Bitterness will turn to wrath, will turn to clamor, will turn to anger. I think I switched those two words. Evil speaking. Ephesians 4:31. Yes, I'm sorry. We talked about that. We took a whole night and looked at those words. So, and there's that hymn. Isn't there a hymn about counting your blessings? Isn't there a hymn about that? Yeah. And then when we're done, what happens? See all that God has done? All right, number 18, never allow an isolated incident or difference of opinion to be the cause of severing a meaningful relationship. Don't cut what you can untangle. You people need to give up the fact that I moved the chairs. Give it up. Give it up. That's an isolated event. That's what we're talking about, a one-time thing. I didn't shake your hand, sorry. Don't let that be the thing that makes you leave God. By the way, I'm going to say it on this one too. That's stupid. If your relationship with God is affected by what a human being has done, you never had a really good relationship with God in the first place. Don't let another human being rob you of your relationship with God. I'm sorry. That was rough. Art?
I think it was Ecclesiastes, or it might have been another one of the wisdom books where it said, don't pay attention to something you overhear a servant say about his master.
Right. Right. Don't cut what you can untangle. And so that's going back to, that isolated event, or that's going back to where we just looked at something that was similar to that. I'm not seeing it. But we need to reconcile as much as we can. But if we cannot reconcile it, they will not reconcile. Then you cut it. But if you can reconcile, even if it's work, do it. Do it. All right, number 19, forgiveness is a private matter. It only takes two to forgive, you and God. But reconciliation requires three, you, God, and your offender. Okay? And so if somebody has offended you, and you can't get past it by just asking God to forgive, then you need to reconcile. We're talking about having a good conscience. Remember 1 Timothy 1:5? We're talking about having a good conscience. That's good conscience toward God and a good conscience toward men. And if we can't have that, then we need to reconcile. If you can't get that with just forgiveness, then you need to reconcile. Okay? And so that takes three. All right, number 20, you have a scriptural mandate to disassociate yourself and your family from the spiritual abuse of a contentious person. We've talked about that. Note that man. Have no fellowship with him. You don't need to be spiritually bullied. You don't need to be. Okay, God's not a bully. God's not called us to be bullies. You don't need to put up with it. How many of you are older than 18? Anybody? You have reached an age where you don't need to be bullied. Now, the only one that has the right to bully you is me through the Holy Spirit. All right, I'm the only one, but through the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Spirit through me. All right, as I'm preaching, sometimes you'll say, and I just said it a minute ago, man, that was harsh. But sometimes from here, hard things need to be said. Okay? Once I leave here, I try not to be that hard guy. When I step over there and I'm down off the platform, I try to be the nice guy.
Did it hurt you to say that?
I believe the key word in that sentence was try. As much as lieth within you, live peaceably with all men. Even God knew. All right, so those are the 20 things that are on that bookmark. We've covered a majority of these things in the lessons that we had. There's a couple more passages I'd like to go to for us as closing remarks on this study. Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Most of you can quote this. This will be the fruit of the Spirit. A good conscience will produce the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians chapter 5. Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. You want to have a good conscience? This is going to be the result of a good conscience. How can we keep a good conscience? Go to Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4. And verse number 8, again, another well-known verse. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. How do we keep a good conscience? If we think on these things, it's kind of hard to think negatively, is it not? Now, I'm sorry, but I don't think that James is lovely. So when lovely comes up, I'm not thinking about James. Lovely things. Good report? Yes. You know, true, honest, just. I mean, what's the only thing on planet Earth that is true? What is the only thing on planet Earth that is true? The Bible. Okay, Jesus is not on planet Earth. But His Word is. His Word is. That's the only thing is true. By the way, doesn't the Bible say that? Thy Word is truth. So, when it says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, if we think about Bible verses, will we have a hard time thinking about somebody's offense? Things that are honest. If we think about things that are honest, will we tend to think about liars? If we think about things that are just, will we think about those things that are unjust? If we think about those that are pure, how about impure things, lovely things, not Jane? Good report. If we think on these things, that's how we keep a good conscience. Okay? So the product of a good conscience is the fruit of the Spirit. How we keep a good conscience is think on these things. Do you have a good conscience? Do you have a clear conscience? How's your conscience between you and God? How's your relationship with Him? You know, those are things, questions that we need to ask ourselves in relation to the power of forgiveness. Because if I'm not right with my fellow man, then I'm probably not going to be right in my relationship with God. All right, questions, comments about the study? Questions or comments?